Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pals Go to the Movies. This is another Throwback Thursday review, and I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to be reviewing Caddyshack from 1980. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. An exclusive golf course has to deal with the brash new member Al and a destructive dancing golfer. Okay, let's start off with the cast for this movie. First up, we have Chevy Chase as Ty Webb, Rodney Dangerfield as Al, who actually doesn't get any respect in this movie. We also have Ted Knight as the judge, Michael O'Keefe as Danny the caddy, Bill Murray as Carl, the groundskeeper, Sarah Holcomb as Maggie, who actually quit acting after this movie. We have Cindy Morgan as Lacey, and we have Harold Ramis as the director. Let's begin with my cons for this movie. The plot is somewhat weak. The story is everywhere. According to me, how I saw it, it just doesn't really focus on anything. I wanted them to focus on Danny, Maggie, and Lacey. Danny's trying to go for the scholarship, but also he has to deal with Maggie, who thinks that she's pregnant, while he's trying to hook up with Lacey. But the movie didn't go that way. The movie didn't shine light on their problems. It forgot about Maggie after a while, and then it just went on to Danny, and it just moved from character to character. It started focusing on Ty, started focusing on Al, started focusing on Carl. It just went from character to character and did not really develop any particular relationship, according to what I saw. And actually, this movie is not what the writers had come up with at first. They actually added Carl, played by Bill Murray, and the golfer at the last minute, and let the actors improvise a lot more than they should have. I think this is why the final product that we saw came out the way it did, because it wasn't really what was focused on the script or what the studio actually wanted. Everything started changing last minute. Harold Ramis changed things even on the set, final seconds. But overall, I think these are some cons that actually later down the line turns into pros. So let me go into my pros. I really enjoyed the one-liners in the comedy that was in this film. I enjoyed it even more after I saw behind the scenes specials of this movie and how things went wrong and issues that had to be worked out in the last seconds, especially the story behind Bill Murray and Chevy Chase and their infamous scene together. In the scene where they're in Carl's room and they're talking to each other, this is a scene where they shared together after their infamous Saturday Night Live beef they used to have back in the old days. This actually scene was added last minute by Harold when he had lunch with the two actors. They agreed to do a scene together, and during the lunch they all sat down together and wrote the amazing scene that we saw on screen. And to see both actors dueling it out comedy wise, trying to go back and forth, to me it was an amazing scene. Also learning that Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray's brother, based this movie on his life as a caddy when Bill and Harold all were also caddies back when they were young. And the pool scene with the Baby Ruth bar is actually based on a real event during his high school days. I think these are just little added bonus things that the movie has going for it, and if it wasn't for the special, I would never have appreciated these scenes as I do now. Also, Rodney Dangerfield was new to acting, so learning about him being not sure of himself while recording, because he was a stand-up comic, and every time he said a joke, he's used to people laughing, so he knows if the joke worked or not. But being on set and dropping his lines and not getting a reaction from the other actors made him really uncomfortable, and he really doubted himself while recording. Harold Ramis actually had to come up and basically talk to him and say, you're doing good, you're knocking it out of the park. And actually, a really fun fact, Rodney was not used to starting his lines when Harold said action. Rodney needed for Harold to basically say, okay, Rodney, start your bit every time instead of saying action. So to me, that's a little kind of funny, interesting thing. So with that, I'm going to ask Touly for his review about this movie.
So I also felt that the movie had a very weak plot execution. Plot-wise, I think it had certain things set up from the beginning that perhaps would have allowed you as an audience to kind of see where they were going with this. And I was on board, actually. Sal already pointed out our lead guy, Danny, who wanted to go to college, or I guess he was having some sort of a life crisis in determining what he wanted to do with his life, whether or not going to college was a thing because of the amount of cost that was associated with it, and him trying to save up money for that, or maybe just go do something else with his life. So I definitely bought into this idea of following this character around and see how he grew throughout the film. But it didn't quite follow through that way because, like Sal said too, and I also felt this way, the plot was all over the place, and it could very well be just due to the overwhelming overwhelming cast that is in this film. We have a lot of big names in this film. A lot of these actors, Sal mentioned, some of them being a part of like Saturday Night Live, people who do comedy, stand-up comedy, who can improvise and stuff. Sometimes having a cast with such big names like this doesn't work well when executing perhaps a script that was already pre-established and for them to follow. And of course, the script's not going to get followed, line per line, but you want to try to stick to the script as much as possible while improvising to maybe generate some genuine reactions or moments that would have otherwise not been able to be captured by the script itself. So there are some leeways for improv, but I feel like, again, due to the sort of cast that was in this film, maybe that affected how the plot would have otherwise been executed and maybe would have gotten me on board more, particularly with Danny. Like I said, I appreciated how they started off introducing his character and his questioning of where he wants to take his life, but how they followed that, it was all over the place. And in the end, I didn't really care about any of the characters. The only thing, and I'm pretty sure this is a part of why this film is looked upon as being a part of like movie history or like sports related history, is it ties in the whole golf aspect to it. But even to me, I don't feel like the golf aspect of this film was like a medium for them to portray who these characters are, or like I said, sort of execute this plot around, because the plot was so all over the place that I didn't feel like the golf even mattered in the end. And we just got these scenes with these characters one after another, and them being these actors and actresses being who they are, on screen, regardless of what the story was about. So, I mean, kudos to these guys. I mean, I think they did a great job at portraying their skill set and whatnot. And in terms of like the movie itself, I feel like after rewatching this film, it's not as strong as a movie relative to how people praise it. If you were trying to praise this movie as being a great movie, if you're talking about this movie being great in terms of the nostalgic feels, the one-liners, as Sal pointed out, the comedy aspect, then of course those things are there. So I'm sort of kind of like in the middle, where I like those aspects, but at the same time, in terms of being a movie that executes what a movie should execute in order for it to be a good film, it sort of missed that mark. So I'm sort of in the middle. I like it, but at the same time, I don't like it. Yeah, I mean, I'll say I'm conflicted about this film. I guess that's how I would describe how I feel about it.
I totally agree with you in that sense. This movie, I mean, for the story and the plot line, it starts off decent, but then they forget about it and it's like watching skit after skit after skit in Saturday Night Live. So to me, this movie, I enjoyed it because of the comedy improvising aspect of it, but I didn't really get what I wanted of a strong storyline, a strong plot, which they could have done, with Danny, but they forgot about Danny and they just kept going, and especially Bill Murray being added in the last minute as they were filming the movie. They added him at the end, and it kind of focused more on the comedy and the improvising aspect of it. And to me, that's what this movie is famous in my eyes for. Having these characters, Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, and all these people come together and just feed off each other as improvising. And that's one of the things that one of the actors, Ted Knightley, didn't really enjoy about this movie. He was actually mad that the actors did improvise more than they were supposed to. He just basically was really furious, and he was telling Harold, the director, they should stop doing this. This is a serious film. We should take it seriously. But Harold, being working with his buddies, kind of was like, okay, we're doing this and it's fun, so let's just get through it. So some of the famous scenes that I'm talking about is like the Cinderella scene, where Bill Murray is hitting the flowers and he's talking to himself and narrating that he's in the last holes and he's about to win the championship and this and this. That scene that Harold Ramis told Bill Murray, here's a scene, improvise. He's like, okay, so he did it. The other scene where he's talking about how he was a caddy for the Dalai Lama, those are scenes that stand out to people and fans. But does that really make a story? Does that really make a plot? No, it doesn't. But like Touly said, I'm conflicted. I really enjoy these scenes and I love watching them and just laughing and saying, wow, that is comedy right there, when you can pull out these lines out of nowhere, So I guess with that, I'm going to ask Touly for his final grade of the movie.
I don't know. It's going to be rough. I'm going to give it a 6. And this is me sort of trying to be in the middle, like I said. I know Caddyshack is a film that's up there in terms of being a classic and a rich part of film industry as it relates to sports. The strong cast and their improvisation, the comedy in this film, those aspects are there as to be expected. But again, going back to the whole story aspect of it, did it execute that part of it? And I felt like that part didn't quite hit the mark for me, at least. So I'm gonna have to give it a 6 just for that reason. I mean, had the story been stronger, then easily would have been like a 7 or above. But like I said, the story wasn't quite there. But again, if you're there for the comedy, the improv, and the cast who made this film what it was, then I guess that's kind of where the positives are. And I'm trying to sort of weigh that into how I feel about the story element of this film.
Okay, so my grade for this movie is going to be a 7 out of 10. It's not for the story, but it's mostly for the jokes and the improvisation. And this is after I saw the behind the story documentary, I would say. Having known all these issues behind the movie and everything, when I saw this movie, it's basically the chemistry these characters brought together. Could the story been better? Yes, it could have been better. And if they would have basically stuck to developing Danny's character and how he went from being a caddy to, trying to get the scholarship and what he had to go through as the real coming of age story, that's one way they could have taken the movie. But then if they did that, would they have taken the jokes out? I don't know. They could have, they might not. Would it have been a better movie? Maybe, maybe not. I can't say. The only thing I can say is that this movie to me seems like a movie made by friends for friends, and the friends are the fans who watch this movie and they just watch it for the comedy, the improvisation. Maybe somebody who's really into storylines won't like this movie, so that's my take. If you really like comedy and one-liners, this is a movie for you. Don't pay attention to the story. It lacks story, but it's a solid 7 out of 10 in the aspect of comedy. So with this, we wrap up the review for Caddyshack. Please join us next time when we review The Wizard.
What is that?
Power glove.
Yeah, well, just keep your power gloves up front, right?
So click the like and subscribe button, leave us a comment below, and remember, keep watching movies.